Coming up on We Talk News this week, a congressional vote for federal legalization reform could come in 1 week, as the MORE Act might be on the docket in the House within 7 days. Plus, there's a new #1 in the multi-state operator rankings as Cresco Labs acquires Columbia Care in a $2 billion stock acquisition. The U.S. State Department gets to visit with basketball star Brittney Griner, who is still being detained in Russia for possessing hash oil. Plus, Colorado licenses their first social clubs in Denver. State-by-state reports from coast to coast on We Talk News next. Pro Cannabis Media original content is supported by Salient Systems, your trusted name in video surveillance for the cannabis industry, and by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Accounting Buds, CPA services for the cannabis industry, and by stylighting.shop. Log on today to get your grow kit.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to We Talk News. I'm Alaina Pinto reporting for Pro Cannabis Media. It's springtime, which means things are beginning to turn green, potentially even for the United States as a whole. Marijuana Moment reports that a key congressional staffer has signaled that the MORE Act may be coming up for another House vote as early as next week. Though nothing is set in stone, the rumor mill is swirling as several advocacy groups say they've heard similar discussions. The legislation would federally deschedule cannabis, among several other reforms nationwide. It would be the second time the MORE Act makes it to the Senate floor and could be one of Democrats' final chance to pass cannabis reform before November's midterms. And on a worldly level, a new bill is asking the United Nations to deschedule cannabis, arguing the war on drugs has negatively affected human rights, health, security, and development on a global scale. The bipartisan federal bill would instruct the UN to deschedule cannabis from its Schedule I status and treat it as a commodity similar to other agricultural products. WNBA star Brittney Griner is still behind bars in Russia amid the ongoing war for allegedly having hash oil in her luggage. And it seems the US government may finally be changing their tone about getting her home to the States. This week, the State Department issued a statement saying, quote, "We insist the Russian government provide consular access to all US citizen detainees in Russia, including those in pre-trial detention, as Brittney Griner is." Some say the government's strategy of remaining low-key is to not increase her profile to the point where she might become a valuable political asset to Russia. But imagine being in a country where potential war crimes are allegedly being committed and you're locked up because of a bit of cannabis in your suitcase. The time for global change is now, and let's hope the government can work quickly to bring Brittney Griner home. Back in the US on Capitol Hill this week, the director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse told senators in a health committee hearing that adolescent cannabis use has not increased in states that have legalized it, much to the surprise of at least one Republican senator. Vote Pro Podcast, Phil Adams has more in this week's DC Report.
Hi, this is Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast, here with the We Talk News DC Report. One of the few pro-cannabis Republicans in Congress died last week. Representative Don Young of Alaska, the longest-serving member of the U.S. Congress and co-chair of the Congressional Cannabis Caucus, was on a flight from Los Angeles to Seattle last Friday when he lost consciousness and could not be revived. First elected to Congress in 1973, Young was one of only 5 GOP House members to vote for ending the federal prohibition on cannabis. Fellow Cannabis Caucus co-chair, Democrat Barbara Lee, called him, quote, "a fierce advocate for ending the failed war on drugs." Young was 88 years old. For the second time in 2 years, a bill to federally legalize cannabis will get a floor vote in the House of Representatives. Among other provisions, this version of the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act would remove cannabis from Schedule I of the Controlled Substances Act, expunge prior cannabis convictions, and allow for resentencing of those currently serving time for cannabis offenses. An earlier version of the MORE Act was passed out of the House back in December of 2020, but subsequently stalled in the Senate, which was then controlled by the GOP. Formal introduction in the Senate of a separate legalization bill, the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act, is expected in April. In Maryland, the Senate Finance Committee considered a pair of bills to put cannabis legalization on the state's November ballot. At a hearing this week, lawmakers discussed HB 1 and HB 837, both of which passed the Maryland House of Delegates last month. HB 1 would put to Maryland voters the question of whether to approve an amendment to the state constitution to legalize cannabis for adults 21 and older. It would also direct lawmakers to provide for the use, distribution, regulation, and taxation of cannabis within the state, as well as the expungement of prior cannabis convictions. HB 837 would establish rules for creating a legal cannabis market should voters approve the amendment to legalize. Both proposals were sponsored by Delegate Lute Clippinger, who chairs the Cannabis Referendum and Legalization Work Group. That's the Weed Talk News for this week. I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast.
For weeks, Weed Talk News has reported on the increase of armed robberies on dispensaries, particularly in Washington State. And the problem does not seem to be getting any better. Well, the state's treasurer is now pointing fingers at federal leaders, blaming the robberies on Congress's failure to enact cannabis banking legislation. Tweeting this week, quote, "This was preventable. This shouldn't be a cash-only business. Congress needs to act now." Josh Kincaid takes a closer look in this week's Washington State Report.
I'm Josh Kincaid from the Talking Hedge with the Washington State Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Washington's governor wants to give hundreds of millions in cannabis tax revenue to people hindered by the war on drugs. The community reinvestment account is part of a larger movement to promote social equity in the cannabis industry. According to the most recent data from the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board in 2020, well less than 20% of the cannabis retail owners identified themselves as minorities. That included 7% Asian, 4% multiracial, 3% Black, 2% Hispanic, and 1% other. Reinvesting in Washington's communities will involve drawing funds from the state's dedicated marijuana account, which holds money from cannabis excise tax, penalties, license fees, and forfeitures. The $125 million for the reinvestment fund would focus on 4 key areas: preventing violence, implementing reentry services for those who were formerly incarcerated, giving legal aid to expunge records and vacate convictions, and then developing economic capital, like helping first-time homebuyers and small businesses obtain access to capital. Next week, you're going to find out about Washington State's stance on delivery services. The spoiler alert, it's not good. But with that, we're going to have to roll up this Washington State Cannabis Report. I'm Josh Kincaid from the Talking Hedge reporting for Weed Talk News. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't. And I'm out.
And it seems some congressional leaders are willing to jump on the legalization bandwagon. This week, Nevada Senator Jackie Rosen tweeted about a meeting with the U.S. Cannabis Council, saying, quote, "It was great to see the council and discuss how Nevada's cannabis industry continues to create new businesses and jobs, bringing millions in revenue for our state. I'll continue to work at the federal level to allow this industry to reach its full potential." So let's take a closer look at what's happening in Senator Rosen's state. Here's Danny Baranowski with the Nevada Report.
Hi there, it's Danny B from City Trees here in Las Vegas, Nevada for the Nevada Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. And boy, do I have some big news coming from the biggest dispensary in the world, Planet 13. So not only are they based here in Vegas, but they've recently expanded their footprint to other states. And this is the hot news. They disclosed their first location into Florida. It's going to be in Orange Park, which is in Jacksonville. Back in October, they signed a $55 million acquisition into Florida and are looking to develop 6 neighborhood-style shops in heavily tourist-trafficked areas. Will they build something as big as they do in Vegas? Looking forward to seeing what they do in Florida. Not only are they in Florida, Nevada, but they're also in California and own 49% stake in an Illinois company. In other news, 2 gentlemen, Boop, boop. They got busted by the police here in Carson City, Nevada, with 7 pounds of marijuana and are being held at a $20,000 bail. These gentlemen came from California. They did not have license plates attached. And just a reminder, it is still federally illegal to cross state lines with cannabis. And as a recommendation from me, please don't ruin it for the rest of us. We need to move this cannabis industry forward, and this is not the way to do it. These gentlemen, like I said, being held at $20,000 bail, and unfortunately, not only did they have the cannabis, the missing license plate, but also a small baggie of white powder. So do follow the rules and don't ruin it for the rest of us, like I said. And lastly, very hot news. If you haven't heard, cannabis consumption lounges are coming to Nevada. And this week, the Cannabis Compliance Board held one of their last public workshops. So public folks were encouraged to give their tips, recommendations. There were a lot of folks really, they had a lot of good ideas and some that had some interesting ideas, but the Cannabis Compliance Board took them all nonetheless. Just as a reminder, there's going to be 40 consumption lounges here in Las Vegas. 20 will be dispensary adjacent. So if you already have a cannabis dispensary, then you have the opportunity to have one cannabis consumption lounge. And then there will be 20 additional to independent folks. So with the independent folks, again, this is the first time that social equity has been defined into law. And so there's going to be 10 independent licenses and then 10 designated as social equity applicants. The CCB part of this public workshop was deciding how these license applications are going to work and what parameters people need to meet. So once these happen, then we encourage, everyone to come and apply. Nevada is going to be the Amsterdam of America. We'd like to be the gold standard. So not only are we going to do it everything, Vegas style, big and bad, but we want to make sure that we are defining social equity in an equitable way that is just and drives commerce forward. Looking forward to seeing what y'all do. This is Danny B from City Trees in Nevada for We Talk News. Signing off.
On the other end of the country in Maine, Representative Shelley Pingree is pushing a bill for the hemp industry. She's calling on the USDA to take a stronger stance on supporting American farmers, which she says will make the hemp industry more profitable and equitable. Sticking with what's happening in the Northeast, regulators in Vermont are beginning to draft guidance for packaging requirements for the industry. So let's check in with Jessie Lynn Dolan for this week's Vermont Report.
I'm Jessie Lynn Dolan from Nurse Grown Organics and Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the Weed Talk News Vermont Report. It's a great weekend for me to be back from CanX in Israel. This coming Sunday, March 27th, is full of Vermont cannabis happenings. Vermontawana's last Ski Days event will be at Magic Mountain in Londonderry. Also on Sunday, Hetty Vermont will be hosting a free seed and clone swap from 2 to 4 p.m. lot scene style at their office on Battery Street in Burlington. From there, you can head over to Hot and Hetty's Stony Supper Club in a sugar shack. Celebrate maple season with an infused meal and syrupy goodness. That's the Vermont Report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
There might be a new number one in the cannabis industry, at least in America. Cresco Labs has agreed to acquire Columbia Care Incorporated, now making Cresco the largest multi-state operator in the US, and the deal comes with a hefty price tag. Deborah Borchardt has the details in this week's Green Market Report.
This is the business update for Weed Talk News from the Green Market Report. We got more earnings this week, but the really big news was the acquisition of Columbia Care by Cresco Labs. This $2 billion deal will make it the largest cannabis company in the U.S. The combined companies would be larger than the current leader, Curaleaf, which had $1.2 billion in revenue. Cresco has 50 dispensaries, 21 cultivation facilities in 10 states, and Columbia Care has 99 dispensaries, 32 cultivation facilities in 18 states. The combined company will have about 6,100 employees. Now, both of them reported earnings this week. Cresco said that its revenue in the fourth quarter rose 34% to $218 million. And for the full year, they had revenue of $822 million. There is some concern about their debt growing. Columbia Care's revenue in the fourth quarter rose 70% to $139 million. Their full year revenue was $460 million. And Jushi Holdings also reported their total revenue rose 104% to $65 million in the fourth quarter. For the full year, they had revenue of $209 million. Unfortunately, Charlotte's Web didn't have a good quarter. Their revenue fell to $24 million from last year's $26 million in the same time period. Overall, for the full year, their revenue rose to $96 million, but they did report a net loss of $137 million. And those are your big headlines this week. I'm Deborah Borchardt from the Green Market Report for Weed Talk News.
And the expansion for Cresco doesn't stop there. The company has announced the grand opening of a new Florida location, bringing the company's total retail footprint to 50 locations across 7 states. 16 of those stores are in Florida alone. With that, Heather Allman has this week's Florida Report.
It's time for the Florida Report from Weed Talk News. I'm Heather Allman from Cannabis Law Report. The Sunshine State hosts around 130 million visitors yearly in addition to 20 million residents. Most are here for a short-term vacation, but in the last few weeks, Florida has seen a mass influx of cannabis companies who are planning on a lengthy staycation instead. Last week, Nevada-based Planet 13 announced their entry into the Florida market, with co-CEO Larry Scheffler stressing the importance of them entering prior to the state's transition to adult use. This week, Chicago-based Cresco Labs announced it is set to acquire Florida's Columbia Care in a deal worth roughly $2 billion. On Wednesday, the two MSOs agreed to combine in a blockbuster all-stock merger, which is the largest in the cannabis industry to date and will make Cresco the largest MSO in the country. Florida's licensed Columbia Care has an excellent geographic footprint but lacks scalability. However, their combined footprint with Cresco would include more than 130 cannabis retail locations across 17 states and the District of Columbia, reaching about 55% of the U.S. population in New York, New Jersey, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Maryland, and of course, Florida. And last but surely not least, while Trulieve announced it was entering the Massachusetts market, a Massachusetts medical dispensary expanded into Tampa Bay, Florida, by completing work on 4 sanctuary medicinal dispensaries for a total of 6 in the state. Vantage Builders built the new dispensaries, and their spokesperson reports the company is working on 6 more openings in Florida expected later this year. Lots of commotion here in Florida. On March 23rd, Agrify Corporation, the leading innovator provider of cultivation and extraction solutions for the industry, announced they drove significant year-over-year growth in 2021 by launching their total turnkey solution for cannabis cultivators and implementing tech advancements to their vertical farming units, or VFUs. All these actions are cumulatively projected to generate an estimated $837 million in total revenue over the next 10 years. They also announced entrance into a TTK partnership with Gold Leaf Florida LLC, which will vastly expand Agrify's footprint in the lucrative Florida cannabis market. This partnership alone is expected to generate more than $380 million in estimated revenue over the full term of the 10-year agreement. In other news, we have a follow-up story to our February report on this week. The case against Florida cannabis doctor has gone up in smoke. Judge W. David Watkins issued a decision in favor of cannabis physician Dr. Joseph Dorn, whose medical cannabis clinic was targeted by the state's Department of Health in an undercover sting operation we reported on last month. Though the COVID-19 pandemic delayed the hearing in the case, the long-awaited March 16th decision by Watkins stated that the Department of Health failed to prove any of its claims against Dorn, writing in his decision that the evidence demonstrates that Dr. Dorn indeed performed a meaningful review and notation of medical histories and did in fact discuss the benefits and risks of medical marijuana with each of the undercover investigators as required by law. Bottom line, the Department of Health failed to present clear substantial evidence that Dr. Dorn acted or failed to act in any manner to defraud or trick any patient or the state. Dorn has been cleared of all charges. That's a wrap for the We Talk News Florida Report. I'm Heather Allman from Cannabis Law Report. Have a great week ahead.
In other MSO news, C3 Industries, based in Michigan, has opened its first Massachusetts dispensary in partnership with local social equity licensee Brian Chavez. With 3 dispensary locations in total planned, it makes the team one of the only social equity applicants in the country to obtain licenses for 3 storefronts in Boston. Ron Marshallsea has much more from Massachusetts this week.
I'm Ron Marshallsea with the Massachusetts Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. This past weekend was NECANN Boston at the Heinz Convention Center. I didn't manage to grab any interviews of my own, but that's probably because I was so wrapped up in enjoying my first cannabis convention, I wanted to take it all in, and I'm glad I did. Being able to meet one incredible person after the other that all work in this industry was amazing, and it makes you really realize that the cannabis industry is certainly here to stay and will continue to grow for the foreseeable future. If you can make it to any cannabis convention wherever you live, especially one like NECANN, I highly recommend it. On Monday, the Cambridge City Council unanimously passed a policy order repealing the 3% community impact fee tax on recreational marijuana. The policy order eliminated the tax, which is currently part of Massachusetts state law, in a move to, quote, support the viability of recreational dispensaries in Cambridge. The policy order also argues that evidence from Northampton suggests the repeal of the tax would not have any appreciable impacts on Cambridge finances, as Northampton repealed their community impact fee in January. And finally, Miss Grass, a U.S. cannabis brand, has partnered with Ascend Wellness to distribute its line of premium THC to Massachusetts as well as Illinois. The first Miss Grass products to be introduced to the Massachusetts market are minis, 5.4 gram pre-rolls available in 3 color-coded strains. These different colors are based on specific terpene and cannabinoid profiles that elicit desired effects and emotions: fast times, quiet times, and all times. They will initially be distributed at Ascend retail locations beginning in Massachusetts as of March 22nd, with Illinois to follow sometime this year. That's this week's Massachusetts Cannabis Report. For Weed Talk News, I'm Ron Marshalsea.
Bay State Cannabis Report is supported by Holyoke Cannabis, Holyoke's finest cannabis recreational experience.
The outgoing director of Pennsylvania's Office of Medical Marijuana is raising red flags over the state's medical marijuana prices. He's calling on the state to look into prices for patients, saying the cost of wholesale has fallen sharply, but the price tag on medical shelves isn't keeping pace. Claudia Post has more on this week's Pennsylvania Report.
I'm Claudia Post from Scarlet Express, and I'm here in the Keystone State, Pennsylvania, reporting for Weed Talk News. Pennsylvania's Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs failed to clarify rules around addiction treatment and medical marijuana use, which is a serious, dangerous decision. Because they did not clarify, a young man named Tyler Cordiero, who was, operative word was, a drug addict, sought addiction treatment, but was denied because he was a Pennsylvania medical marijuana card holder. I mean, that's just beyond awful. It took 17 months, 17 months for the department to clear up the confusion. Meantime, people are dying, but oh well, you know, it's the government, move slowly. During that time, unfortunately, Tyler died of a fatal overdose. The department secretary was asked to explain the delay in not notifying county and state level providers that marijuana alone should not disqualify a person seeking aid. And when asked, this is so past the buck, when asked why, she said the department wasn't given permission to distribute that information and encouraged county drug and alcohol offices to reach out to the federal government. Is that an answer? That's called pass the buck. Kick the can, whatever you want to call it. That's disgusting. Poor Tyler. Recently, hearings were completed for recreational legalization, finally, but at the conclusion of the hearings, Senator Judy Ward called the hearings one-sided. Why? She said that some of the really important stakeholders were left out of the discussion. So what I learned in business a long time ago, if I want to change something in my business, I go to the people who are doing it. I don't make a decision in isolation. So here we have some of the stakeholders who were not included drug and alcohol professionals, chiefs of police, the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, and smart approaches to marijuana. It's another disgusting decision. A few weeks ago, I reported that the PA Department of Health recalled and banned 670 types of cannabis vape products. Regulators declined to explain the action beyond saying that the medicines contained added ingredients that have not been approved by the FDA. What are those ingredients? Who knows? Because nobody's telling us. P.S. These products have been on the market since 2018. So why did the state allow these products to be sold in the first place? This level of recall only really happens when you have imminent risk. You know, sort of like COVID and imminent risk. It's just another absurd decision. The executive director of the House Health Committee stated there was some contamination in a product at one of the sites in regards to vaping of medical marijuana, but did not give information as to which facility nor what the contaminant was. Oh well, shooting in the dark here, and we are just left with no information. Take a deep breath, Claudia, and I'm going to say that's a wrap from Pennsylvania. I'm Claudia Post from Scarlet Express, and I'll be back next week to talk about what's hot and what's not in Pennsylvania. From Weed Talk News, have a fabulous week.
A farmer's market stand raising eyebrows in Missouri. Budman turned heads when it put out signs at St. Louis's famous Soulard Farmers Market saying things like 10 pounds for $5,000. But it wasn't THC flower, and despite not breaking any laws, the company is being asked not to return to the market until further notice. Brandon Jones takes a closer look in this week's Missouri Report.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones from Distribution Maven with the Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. And yeah, it's crazy. I saw the story on Fox 4 News. So basically at Soulard Market there in St. Louis, the owner of a CBD company basically had it all approved, had all the paperwork correctly to be able to sell his CBD flower there in bulk like that. The big problem was that he started now selling Delta 8. Uh-oh. And he posted it right above it. So there's a big sign saying homegrown Delta 8. And of course, with social media, he was shut down pretty quickly and is now not allowed to come back to the farmer's market. The CBD that he had in big bins, he had it all approved. He had the testing, the paperwork. The owner of the actual market was okay with him selling that. But once he started doing the Delta 8, that's kind of when things kind of changed a little bit. So they're under investigation to see if they can get it put back in as they take the Delta 8 off. But at this time, we don't know. So my second story is actually about the rally that's happening on the 29th here in Jefferson City, Missouri. There's a big group of cannabis enthusiasts here going to the state capitol just to bring awareness, education, and see if the Legal 22 Missouri Cannabis Act can actually get passed. That's big for all the people that are in jail, because expungement is a big part of that bill. And then bringing recreation to 22 in Missouri would be a big, big thing. So if you don't have anything to do on the 29th, head down to Jefferson City, Missouri, raise awareness and support for the cannabis industry. Thanks a lot for everybody. Again, I'm Brandon Jones from Distribution Maven with the Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News.
California's Department of Cannabis Control has a new Deputy Director of Public Affairs appointed by Governor Gavin Newsom. And amid the state's nasty tax battle in the industry, one senator is pushing legislation to establish a tax credit for cannabis retailers in the Golden State. Christopher Smith has all the details in this week's California Report.
Greetings from the left coast. This is the California Roundup for Weed Talk News. There's nothing in the world as good as California bud, and a new bill would offer a legal way to share our bounty with border states. Theoretically, SB 1326 seeks to approve interstate commercial transactions for cannabis products. The thinking is that states with lower supply would welcome a little extra to feed their demand. Problem is, California just doesn't have a little extra. Our oversupply is the stuff of legend. And that's all before the feds weigh in about the issue of interstate commerce of a Schedule I drug. Stay tuned. A bill introduced in California aims to create tax credits for states' cannabis retailers as lawmakers seek to help the industry compete with the unregulated market. Under the legislation proposed by Democratic State Senator Scott Wiener, legal cannabis businesses would receive a tax credit equal to employment compensation, safety-related equipment, and employee workforce development and safety training. The measure has union support. In an effort to recoup lost revenues, the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration auctioned off a commercial property on March 23rd that was seized in connection with illicit cannabis retail operations. The property in Whittier was part of an investigation into illegal cannabis sales, which uncovered more than $850,000 in unpaid taxes. The property ended up selling for $330,000, and on March 2nd, about a month ago, the department sold another property in Compton for $256,000 in conjunction with the LA Sheriff's Department. And a cannabis software startup called Jointly Better Inc. has found a clever way to attract software engineers and compete with Amazon, Google, and Facebook for talent. A life management and stress management toolkit that includes monthly reimbursements for cannabis purchases as part of the compensation package. Jointly is looking to hire 25 people by the end of the year. And I'm Christopher Smith, publisher of the American Cannabis Report, bringing you California stories for Weed Talk News.
Some cannabis businesses in Denver have been given the green light for a hospitality license. That means some of those businesses now have the option to create membership lounges or other spaces for public consumption of cannabis. And there's a similar scene happening in Michigan, as the state's first licensed consumption lounge is set to open its doors just in time for 4/20. So with that, let's check in with Michigan NORML Executive Director, Rick Thompson.
Hello again. This is the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News. Let's begin. Well, it's a big payday for cities in Michigan who allow adult use cannabis retailers. The 10% excise tax we collect on recreational sales of cannabis is divided between roads, schools, and the communities who allow cannabis sales. That local money is held for communities who had open and operating cannabis retailers, and every retail storefront which collected tax in 2021 will yield $56,000 to their host cities. Now, almost all cities have more than one storefront open, so some cities will receive more than $250,000 from the program, and some could receive more than $1 million. This cut of the tax money spent by consumers will save some cities from having to shut schools or lose police officers. It could pay for new construction, for more playgrounds, or other city expenses. Now, while that's great news for the rest of the state, it's a terrible blow to the city of Detroit, which has refused to allow adult use cannabis retailers to open while they figure a way to advantage locals over outsiders in the licensing process. If all of Detroit's 75 medical marijuana retail licensees had an adult use license, they'd be $4,200,000 richer right now. Hey, look, it's that 420 number coming back up again. Hash Bash Weekend is a little over 1 week away, and all the latest announcements from the field are positive. Monroe Street Fair has expanded. The Hash Bash Cup seems to be back and better than ever. There's a new treasure map project to help people explore Ann Arbor's cannabis venues and its history. And the sitting Attorney General is going to speak at the Bash on April 2nd. Yes, Dana Nessa will once again take to the stage at the Bash and deliver words of inspiration and guidance to the thousands of heavy cannabis users gathered there. Now, her first appearance at the Bash was in 2018 when she was a candidate for the job, and the MI Legalized ballot proposal was still as yet unapproved. She took the stage then with our current governor, Gretchen Whitmer, and Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. The Hash Bash Organizing Committee welcomes her back to the Bash, and we hope everyone listening attends all the events being hosted by the cannabis community next weekend in Ann Arbor. Detroit. The Motor City still has no adult use cannabis businesses, as you heard earlier, and a proposed ordinance to allow these facilities will be even further delayed due to action by the City Council. A vote on this ordinance was to be held Tuesday of this week, but after a 1-hour closed session and a 2-hour public meeting, Council decided to bump their vote for another week in order to give more information to the people about the potential changes this ordinance could bring to the city. The new meeting date is April 5. During Tuesday's meeting, Council member and former Senator Coleman A. Young Jr. proposed multiple amendments to the program, including allowing stacked licenses, doubling the annual budget for social equity from $500,000 to $1 million, expanding the number of cannabis retailers and micro businesses allowed in the city, expanding social equity definitions to include any former felons or anyone who was a caregiver prior to 2017. Now, each one of his proposals was rejected by council, and most were by an 8-1 vote. Several black owners of cannabis businesses in Detroit spoke against any further delays in passing the ordinance, as every day they're prevented from having adult use sales in the city, their businesses are subject to closure, said one participant. The new ordinance gives 2 tracks for license approval, one for social equity applicants and another for the rest of the people, according to Council Chairman Pro Tem James Tate, who still feels his new ordinance is lawsuit proof. And most of the speakers at Tuesday's council session complained they felt the ordinance did not give enough advantage to native Detroiters. The United Food and Commercial Workers Union has announced that Manistee, Michigan's own cannabis store, Authentic 231, has unionized their workforce. The effort to unionize was supported by the company's owners, which are Left Coast Holdings. The vote includes a labor peace agreement clause, which prevents workers from authorizing walkouts over contractual disputes. Left Coast has cultivation facilities in Michigan and will expand its retail presence and offer union opportunities for all of their ventures. The Food and Commercial Workers Union has already enrolled union members in the cannabis industry in both Illinois and California. And that's it for the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News.
And it's the final week of March, and Weed Map's marketing team doesn't seem to be missing any shots. The site is hosting a March Madness style bracket competition, pitting 32 strains against each other to find which bud customers like best. The campaign even got a shout out from Kevin Durant. So perhaps a sign that mainstream media and entertainment will have to face the fact that it's a whole new world of weed out there. And remember, use it wisely. That's it for Weed Talk News this week. I'm Alaina Pinto reporting for Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, my name's Tai Chang. I'm the president and founder of Aloha Green Apothecary in Hawaii. We're a vertically integrated medical cannabis company with 3 dispensaries, 1 extraction lab, and 1 cultivation center near the North Shore of Oahu. We have over 150 employees now, and we've been working with Adaptive HR to meet our human resource needs. We're super excited to work with them as we expand, and we've grown at least 2-3 times over the last 2 years. So we look forward to a good relationship with Adaptive, and come visit us in Hawaii anytime. Aloha.
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are 2 productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. and we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Hey, you want to grow your own plants? Check out Style Lighting's Grow Kit. It has everything you need to become an expert home grower and bring the power of the sun indoors. Style Lighting uses TCP's high-powered commercial LEDs that deliver twice the output in the market. The Grow Kit has a grow bag, a timer, chains to hang the light, and of course the best in the business lighting system by TCP. Check out stylelighting.shop for more information. Meet Caduceus Science, the alternative wellness company. You know CBD, but how about CBG, CBN? That's right, Caduceus Science produces a range of full-spectrum products, all lab-tested in small batches to maintain the highest quality of products. CaduceusScience.com. Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.